everyone. Tonight for Find Your Fairy Tale, I am wearing my Esther Earl green. So who is Esther Earl? Well, she was an incredible teen who was taken too soon by thyroid cancer, but her family published her writing, and I was so struck by her voice, her spirit. I feel like in many ways, I know what she was about, and I wish I could have met her before she was gone. But how I got to know her incredible family was actually because she's so compelling that when she met an author that she loved, John Green, he was so struck by her and her philosophy, her personality, that he dedicated his book, The Fault in Our Stars, to her. The Fault in Our Stars, you probably have read or maybe seen the movie about two teenagers with cancer who are finding their place in life and falling in love for the first time. And they figure out that a short life can be a good life. It's not about the length. It's about the way that you live and the way that you love. And so when this whole movie and book blew up, I actually read the book on an airplane coming back from India to see my family. And it was the first time in a long time that I cried publicly when I read The Fault in Our Stars. And my best friend in Boston said, you know that was inspired by a girl in our town, a Quincy girl. In fact, I think she lives around the corner from you. I said, I had no idea. So I looked into it and I asked my news director, hey, can we do a story on this? The fact that there's this book that is tied to our area. And that's when I first met Esther Earl's family. And I interviewed her parents, Lori and Wayne. And they were so dedicated to having her memory live on and helping other families cope with the challenges that pediatric cancer presents. So I want to bring in tonight Lori and as well Evangeline. Hold on, it just scrolled away. They just asked, let me scroll down. Viewer request, there they are. Evangeline is Esther's sister. I've been incredibly active in creating a nonprofit, a group, a charity that helps families dealing with.
Oh, there we are.
Hi.
Hi, Ronnie.
I miss your faces. It's so good to see you both.
You too. It's great to see you. Thanks for inviting us tonight. We're happy to be here.
You know, I was telling your mom, Evangeline, Lori, I was saying that in so many ways, COVID has obviously been awful, but it also has been this thing that brings us together, even though we're so far away. I mean, I wouldn't be able to be involved in your fundraiser this year if maybe I had to fly back. Maybe I could. For any of you who are watching right now, once I did this story with the Earls and learned about Esther and learned about their organization, This Star Won't Go Out, and what it does for families, I was like, we should have a fundraiser. And Lori, you looked at me and you said, sure. You want to help? And I was like, I've never done this from scratch before, but 100% yes, I want to help. And so
at first
we kind of learned.
Wonderful, because you and Lisa did so much, and you had so many wonderful connections, and we had the event at Alba on the rooftop.
Yeah. Under the stars. Yeah. And I think that what struck me from that event too is how many people, and you probably get this all the time, come up to you and say, I had a sister, my mother had, my father did. So everybody, it's not even 1 degree usually of separation. It's right there, has somebody that had to fight cancer. And so what you're doing is so universal. And when I think about the whole notion of finding your fairy tale, it's kind of your mission in life. And in many ways, Esther's mission, became yours, because it's not just about helping families with their expenses. It's more about healing their spirit. And she had such a lovely light about her. And I guess maybe, is that like her favorite color was this green, right?
Green. You're wearing, I know that's the dress that you're wearing for our gala event, yes, which I am so excited about.
And it matches the bracelets that you have, This Star Won't Go Out. And I love the second part of that, which is we won't let it. And that's part of building the fairy tale too. I mean, you talk about slaying dragons. The worst dragon in the world is loss of a loved one. How do you even come back from that? You come back from that by turning it into some sort of action. And then what sort of happiness can you give other families, So I love your mission. And that's why I keep, you mentioned the dress, right? I moved down to Tampa. It became difficult to host in person. But what did I do? When I saw a bright green dress, I still pulled it off the rack, bought it, hung it in my closet, and was like, I just have a feeling I'm gonna be back. And this is an Esther dress. Like I just need it.
Great.
Yeah. So, you know, the gala is, so we have a gala coming this Saturday.
Yeah.
Which I know you're hosting, and if you guys want to see the best hostess ever, not hostess, MC, Sorboni is just so amazing because she's so genuine, and you exude that kind of enthusiasm and stuff. But you know, when Esther was just 12 years old when she was diagnosed with cancer, and was fine kind of at the beginning. I mean, she had surgery, we were dealing with treatment, we were just taking it in stride. And you know, any family that's gone through cancer, whether it's of a family member, but especially a child, you know, we're part of a family that nobody really wants to be to. 46 kids a day in the United States are diagnosed with cancer. So that's just, it does, like you said, when Wayne and I have spoken at events, especially talked about Esther, talked about, you ask people to raise their hands and say, is there anyone here who's been touched by cancer? And there's almost not a hand that doesn't go up, because this is something that strikes so many of us. But so Esther got sicker. Her treatments meant she was in the hospital more often. The cancer that started in her thyroid had metastasized into her lungs. And eventually, when she was just after she turned 16, she did pass away from her cancer. And you know, I think one of the questions we get asked at events is, what do you know, how do you deal with loss? How do you deal with that kind of grief? How do your kids deal with that kind of grief? And the first thing I think we learned is that we all dealt with it differently. And I think this is a really apropos topic right now, because we're also in the middle of a pandemic, and it's just cancer. We all are facing those kinds of tragedies in our lives and losses.
And in many ways, people can't even, you know, have those moments. They can't get in front of, especially their elderly relatives, to even say goodbye. And the way that you get to say goodbye can impact how you begin to heal. So yeah, certainly, you know, people are going to be turning to families like yours to say, and they ask the question, how do you do it? What do you do? But how did you decide to turn an unfair thing, an unfair loss, into a way to pay it forward? How do you go through that thought process, and then how does that help you feel better?
Well, I could easily tell you about my story and my husband's story. Evangeline, I think, as a sibling.
Yeah.
Before I answer that question, Sorboni, I just want to say that I don't know what it's like to lose a sibling. And I think that's a different thing. And I am impressed with my kids and how they've moved forward.
Yeah. I mean, like my mom was saying, you know, everyone deals with grief in a different way. And so I'm was one of 5 with Esther, and I'm now one of 4 siblings. And if you look at each one of us individually, we all dealt with it differently. So I kind of threw myself into, actually ended up doing, working on farms out in Oregon and Washington State for a little while, and ended up going to an amazing college in Vermont where it was like really environmentally focused.
Yeah.
So I kind of threw myself into nature as a way to heal. And then in terms of the nonprofit, I mean, I think you should share your story, because This Star Won't Go Out wouldn't exist, and we wouldn't be able to give back and help families who are going through the same thing that we dealt with, unless my mom took her grief and threw it into creating This Star Won't Go Out. So I think it is a really beautiful thing that you've done, and an amazing way to deal with your own grief. Well, and it's turned into something, you know, even bigger than what you envisioned or what we thought it would be.
For true. Yeah. So I don't think that in any way I'm really that unusual, and I don't think that Esther was amazing, but she's really, in so many ways to us, she's a representative of all the amazing kids that are out there. Because that is one of the things you hear families say. A lot of families who've gone through grief, like we went through, find ways to take their energy and turn it into doing good, whether that's supporting advocacy or finding ways to raise research dollars for childhood cancer, which is very underfunded compared to some of the other cancers like breast cancer and prostate cancer, because kids don't really have a voice. So you've got grieving parents trying to be the voice for their kids.
Right.
So that's a big piece of it. But, you know, the first thing that happened after Esther passed away was actually my husband, which is part of how this all happened, is that he threw himself into writing her story. You appreciate, because you love to write stories. And but the story he first wrote was a biography of her from the time she was born till the time she was 16. And it took her quotes kind of all through her life, because as you know, her words are just so wise so often. And then when that was finished, he shared it with his family, and then he decided to send a copy of it to John Green, because Esther had become friends with John Green when she was sick. And when he did that, John said, "Oh, can I share this with my publisher at Penguin Books?" And we're like, "Okay, well, let's check with our kids." So we asked Evangeline and we asked Abby, "Is that okay with you if we share Esther's journals? Because you're in some of them."
Right.
And they said okay, although Evangeline,
Okay.
except they had a pact. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So so we said, okay, you can publish her journals, because we thought that her journals were a beautiful representation of her and other children who are dealing with cancer.
Yeah.
At the same time, Abby, my older sister, who lives out in San Diego, and I said, we turned to each other and we're like, if either one of us pass away, like, we are going and we're taking each other's journals and we're keeping them from mom and dad. We might even burn them. Like,
Oh my gosh, that's funny. You know, I know a lot. Like I have jokes with even, you know, my best friends where it's like, okay, if anything happens to me, like, what are you going into my house to just get rid of the embarrassing thing? So I know exactly what you're saying. It's like everybody has to have the person who knows what drawer to go in, and just never happened, never was there. She never thought those things. No. So yeah, you know, it's,
You know, so we have been, you know, people have asked us, well, you know, would Esther have wanted to share her writings with the world? And, you know, Esther was already being a really public person. She was on YouTube. She had a group of friends that they did a lot of things online. She was involved in the Harry Potter Alliance, which worked to use the Harry Potter stories to find ways to advance social justice. Like marriage equality and other kinds of things like that. And so she was already really being public. So in a way, we really did feel like she had, and she knew we thought her writings were amazing. So we felt like she had given us permission. So we went on.
Certainly she was always meant to be the author that she became.
She did. She wanted her third grade biography. She says, someday I want to be an author. So, so we got to do that for her and with her, and out of it came a platform to talk about childhood cancer, but also really a platform to talk about how to live life fully. And that's really been kind of the message. You know, you talk about finding your fairy tale, and what I have found, and I think what my husband has found and what our kids are finding, is that it's okay. You know, we're so afraid in our culture of talking about death. It's really kind of like we call it in sociology, we call it a death denying culture, right? We use lots of Botox, we do fitness, we lose weight, you know, we do all this stuff to stay as young as we can. And yet the one thing that happens to all of us is change. And part of that change leads to finally, you know, we're all going to die. And if you push that away, you miss out on so much that's meaningful. And, you know, and so we don't talk about Esther's death and Esther's dying to talk about death itself, but to talk about the fact that, you know, it's an opportunity to check in and say, am I doing the kinds of things I really want that are meaningful, that will matter in the end, that are my legacy? you know, that I'm leaving behind? So, you know, those are pretty important questions to ask.
It's so true. It's so true because it changes how you live a day and a moment and how you treat each other and what you worry about. It absolutely will change your time on this planet when you start being aware that you have a set time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really perspective. And of course, she had just 16 years. And so her 16 years, it's really not sad. I can't remember. Oh, I just heard of, I hate that. I should have looked up the quote before I came. But I just heard somebody talking about the fact that it's not sad when life stops, because it's where it's a full life. And Esther's 16 years were really full. And John Green says that in his wonderful introduction in the book, which I always tell people the book is, you know, just John Green's introduction. It's really great and worth the price of the book. But, you know, that's what he says, a short life can be a good life. And I think if we remember that are we living each moment for, you know, what's really meaningful? And are we thinking about the people around us and that focus on love and care and community? And gosh, now more than ever, those are good focuses.
For sure, right. At a time when it's easy to fall into, you know, division because you end up being pushed to almost pick a side, and then we get a pandemic on top. I always say, like, I never thought a pandemic could be political, but here you go. I mean, there's society and then there's humanity, and I think that what I was always struck by when I met your family was the humanity. You know, you're all academics. You all have a lot of faith. You all are philosophers. And that is what stood out in Esther's book, is she had, and that's what also made me smile, because it was 14, 15-year-old philosophy, you know, like, who am I? You know, it wasn't written all the time in some super deep way. It was written in an honest, completely sincere way. And it was all of the questions that I recognized having along the way as I was growing up, and some that I still have, you know, every day. And I think that that's why it's such a beautiful story. And I think that's why it's such a great, the idea that This Star Won't Go Out is the name of your organization is so perfect too, because that's how you keep somebody, you know, present is with what you're doing. So this year you have to go virtual with what you're doing. And it's going to be interesting. I think that what's awesome about that, though, is you can reach out to everybody across the country, across the world. And I would love to tell our viewers right now, you know, how they can get involved, what the idea is. So this is, you know, there are these big organizations, right? And get tons of money, and it trickles down, and maybe it goes to a hospital, maybe it goes to a research project. What you guys do is you find a family, and you help them. And it's basically like, it's just, you find them and you give them a hug in every possible way.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about how the organization works.
So really, one of the things that happened when Esther was sick and we were struggling financially, we were losing hours at work. And, you know, for some jobs, if you're not there, you're not getting paid and you're worrying about the money. And I can remember getting online looking for resources, like, how are we going to pay our rent, and finding a couple of the big organizations. And the only thing that they had available to us was like, we'll pay your gas to get to the hospital. And we live 7 miles from the hospital.
Right.
So
that wasn't going to make or break you.
Going to help us very much. And so when we started The Star Won't Go Out, we wanted to make it easier for families that were going through that same financial stress. They actually call it financial toxicity. There's a name for it. And so I actually met with Joe Shabbat, who is the resource director and helps families that are struggling at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. And I said, we want to make sure that we structure this in a way that it doesn't have a lot of red tape, and that we can like quickly turn around money to a family who needs rent that month, you know. And so that's he kind of helped me structure things in the foundation so that we could do that, so that we can provide, you know, not a $50 check or a $250 check, but a $2,000 check that can pay for the rent that month. And and then try to follow that family and assist them a second time if they need it. And so that's really where it. And then in the video, if you come to our live program Saturday night, you're going to get to meet. Who are they going to tell them about Jane? She's amazing.
Yeah, you're going to get to meet Jane. She's 3 years old. She actually turns 4 this month. She's been struggling with leukemia, but she's doing really well. The Santoro families, you're actually going to get to meet all of them. And it's a beautiful story. It's beautiful to see how Jane's doing. She's doing really well right now. And just to hear like how this Star Won't Go Out has impacted them. It's really, you know, a personal thing. But yes, so the gala, you guys will get to hear from the Santoro family. You'll get to hear from some other amazing guest speakers. You get to hear Sorboni be our MC throughout the whole evening. And that's this coming Saturday, October 24th at 7:30 p.m. That video will go live. It's going to be a really beautiful thing to be a part of.
Meeting the families is just incredible. I mean, I was lucky enough to be there in person for 3 years. And that's when it becomes so real. You know, sometimes you can donate to a cause and you don't really see where it goes, but you're working directly with these families, and then people who are donating their time and money to this organization tend to then come out to the events. And so then they're meeting the families, and it's just such a amazing community feel of we're going to get through this together and we're going to defeat this together. And I mean, in many ways, those are the easy things. The money is the like, that's what we can fix. You know, we can go out, we can raise money, we can ask for help. It's this horrible disease of cancer that will take years and years to figure out. So what can we do in the meantime? You're doing it.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the wonderful thing for me as involved, you know, as the director of the Star Won't Go Out, and just in this role, has been to watch people. I mean, I already knew that people were generous, but just people want to be generous. And a lot of times it's just the opportunity. One of the things that I love about the Star Won't Go Out is that we started out of the base of Esther's communities.
Yeah.
Her communities, which are Nerdfighteria, which is the community that are fans of John Green and his brother Hank Green and the videos they make. So they're YouTube fans. And then there were young people who were Harry Potter fans. And those young people are now like Esther's age, so they're in their 20s. But they to watch young people just jump at an opportunity to give. Mm-hmm. We had kids contacting us to say, we want to go walk around this wall, this castle in England, and we're going to raise money to do this walk, or we want to do a bake sale, or we want, you know. And so it was so many young people that were getting involved, and it just felt like an extension of what Esther would really want, you know.
So this Star Won't Go Out has not just like directly helped impact families who have a child diagnosed with cancer and brought those families together and given them different resources that they didn't know existed, but it's also brought young people together.
Exactly. And I've always felt like that was like half of our mission was, it's not just we get to bless families financially, mm-hmm. but we get to inspire young people, which is the best, you know, I mean, the best resources we have in our world is the young people, right? Go out and vote, everyone.
Sure. Yes. Go out and vote. Every time I see a picture with the sticker, you know, on social media, I'm so happy. You know, I love to see that. And I think that Esther would be happy with the level of activism that our young people have. I mean, the things that have happened in current events, unfortunately, have been jarring enough that it woke up this younger generation, whether it was school shootings or racial tensions. There's a lot of stuff that's happening, you know, right now and over the last 5-10 years. I had a pretty, I would say, peaceful, you know, backdrop when I was a teenager. By comparison, I think. I don't know.
That actually makes me think, what would Esther be writing about and doing now? I wonder, do you mind if I read part of a letter that Esther wrote?
I would love for you, you know, I was going to ask if you could read, you know, your favorite quote. Look, I have, over the years, I have my little favorite ones, like Post-it noted. I think it's like, what does this one say? Happy quote, emphasis on one. I don't even know, you know, I hadn't opened the book in many months, and I was like, what was this one that I had marked down, emphasis on one? And then I would open it up and I remember that. I remember why that struck me. So absolutely, let's read some of Esther's words, because I mean, she loved to read, she loved to write, and that is the biggest connecting force, I think. Maybe I'm biased because I love to read and write, but I think that's the biggest connecting force that we have, and that's how someone's immortal.
Yeah, words are amazing. Actually, she has that one quote, which I don't have marked in my book, but you probably, maybe you know it, where it is she says, if there was one word,
Hang on.
I know you know that one.
Has it. No.
I love that one. Ready? Wait a second.
Yeah.
If one person sits down at their computer one day and types one word, does that affect the future? If that one person didn't type that one word, would the future's history be changed? Does their one word even mean anything? Does my one word mean anything? Does that one person's word even get read once? If I wasn't sitting here writing my words, would my future be different? If that isn't the best way to say, do I matter and how do I matter? I will make myself matter. I don't know what is. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that struck me when I read it.
I think in this climate, when we're talking about the conversation of the value of individuals,
Mm-hmm.
that, you know, I think that's one thing she would be writing more about.
Yes. The one word matters. What is the one, the letter that she wrote?
Towards the end of the book, we have put in a letter that Esther wrote. So if you've ever heard of the website Future Me,
yes.
For me, you can write a letter to yourself in the future. And so we had no idea that Esther had done this.
Oh, wow.
And so when she was 14, she wrote a letter to herself that she would receive when she was 17. And
so a year after she passed away, we got an email.
You got an email that 14-year-old Esther wrote to 17-year-old Esther. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So my husband actually opened his email first, and he said to me, "Don't open your emails," because I was at a meeting. So of course I opened my email. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I can't look at this, because I was heading into a meeting, and didn't read it until afterwards. And I'm not going to read it all to you, because one of the things Esther loved was to write really long letters. And they were actually, she did them as gifts. Yeah. So she would write long letters for Mother's Day, or long letters for our other kids write beautiful notes, but not as long of letters as Esther did. And so this one's like 8 pages long in the book.
Yeah.
But when you get to the end of it, so remember, she's 14, she's writing, she picked a date when she was 17. And so she says, I'm just going to read a little part of it here, a couple paragraphs. She says, on Thursday, I'm going to get another CT scan and a PET scan, and it will show how I'm reacting to the chemo. I really hope that my lungs are improving. I'm nervous. I've been feeling a little worse with my breathing lately, and I just hope and pray that it'll be all right. Hey, remember to thank your doctors, Dr. Smith and Annette. They're fantastic people, and they're your doctors. Don't be afraid to tell them your worries. To be honest, I'm not even sure if future me will even be alive, and for that reason, I'm sending this email to Mom and Dad. Since if I'm not alive, at least I know this email will be checked. Man, what a way to end this letter. Okay, future me, just try to be happy. Try to do things. Don't forget that many times you thought you'd never make it through the night. Remember all the people that have helped you in the past. Tell your family how much you love them. Go to school. It may seem stupid, but doing homework and research can get your mind off the little bothersome things. Read. You're forgetting to read as much, and reading is a lovely thing. Try to solve a Rubik's Cube again. You solved your first one yesterday. Smiley face. She loved emoticons. They're all over her book. And then she says, the quote that's on the back of the book, she says, just be happy. And if you can't be happy, do things that make you happy, or do nothing with people that make you happy. There was so much I wanted to say, and maybe I'll send another one of these if anything happens. I love you, and I hope you turn out good.
That's everything.
Oh,
that's
philosopher, as you said.
She's a philosopher.
Why?
She always was. And you know, that gets to the heart that gets to the heart of find your fairy tale. Just be happy, and if you can't be happy, do things that make you happy, or do nothing with the people that make you happy. This whole concept of talking to artists, to activists, to just the neighbor next door online like this has become such a inspiration to me. And to be able to spend time with people like you and talk about how we can be happy. I mean, really, that's what I'm doing. I'm doing, in many ways, I'm doing nothing with the people who make me happy, but we're doing that with each other in a forum where hopefully someone who's listening right now says, you know what? I want to spend my day a little bit differently. I want to spend my day a little bit, more aware of the fact that time is passing. Have I told the people that I love? I love them enough. And that's why I think it's so incredibly brave what you all do, because pain is a private thing. And when you make it public, you turn it into a force, and it can be a force for good. And that's what she was all about. And that's why I attached myself so quickly. I mean, I joked around with you when I first met you. I was like, oh, you're stuck with me. You're absolutely stuck with me. Because I just, when you're covering news stories, you see stuff happen, whether it's, things change in an instant. Sometimes for the better, sometimes it's a tragedy. But you see how people deal with it and change along with it. And so this was one of those stories where I got to follow what happened after. And it's been an incredible experience to get to know you and to be able to help from a distance for the event on Saturday. So I really hope, that everybody who's watching now, and that when I say you can't get rid of me, like, you both know, like, what am I going to be doing between now and Saturday? I'm like, what are you doing Saturday? Join me Saturday. What are we doing Saturday? Let's raise some money, So we will hopefully see a lot of people on Saturday. What's the goal this year?
We want to be able to help at least 20 more families, which means raising, we were trying to set modest goals because it was virtual and we didn't know. Mm-hmm. So we said, at first we were just like, well, as long as we raise $20,000 to $30,000, but we actually in sponsorships got almost $20,000. Okay. So maybe, maybe we have to up those goals. There's some really cool auction items. People are so generous. Yeah, people are so generous. What are some of the
just amazing gifts that have come through.
Harpoon Brewery just came through yesterday. They're not even up yet. We have to get the picture to upload them.
There's some great auction items that are actually live right now, so you can actually start bidding.
Yeah, and I'll be sharing those, all throughout the rest of the week. Things that we can bid on, and I think it gives us things to look forward to for when we can go do things again in a unmasked way, or masked. Who cares, right?
And it's a good excuse to get dressed up, right? Like if you have shiny or like your beautiful green dress that you're wearing, just something.
This is probably the most dressed up that I'll be, alone with my.
So I was going to tell you, Sorboni, you mentioned masks, and we have these are the masks. So it's actually free. It's actually free to register online this year. We just wanted to make it available for everybody, and then if the event is free, then hopefully you're going to feel more encouraged and compelled to give, to donate directly through the website. Through the virtual gala site, or you'll feel like you have money in your pocket, so you can bid on some auction items.
Yeah.
And so it's free registration, although there are 2 other levels that if one of the ways you want to give is right at the beginning, because you don't know how much else you'll give. You can, for $20, you can register and you can get a bumper sticker. And then this is the mask that one of our wonderful volunteers, her name's Ariana, and she just graduated last year from
right?
Mass School of Arts. Design.
Right near BU, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And she made these. And so this is for a $50 registration. You get your own souvenir mask from the Shine Under the Stars Gala.
And they're beautiful.
Yeah.
So you can tell everybody.
It's a weird reality because we're all walking around complimenting you. I like your mask. Things I never thought I would say.
Well, guess what? Let me tell you about this amazing organization and a way to donate to help kids with cancer.
Exactly. Oh, I really cannot wait to see what the event, you know, brings in when we go live, and I hope everyone will join us. And I always ask all of my guests, you know, do you have a favorite fairy tale from when you were a child, or one that maybe you read to kids? Do you have a favorite fairy tale, and why? What about you, Evangeline?
Ooh.
I know it kind of puts people on the spot, because it's like, well, I don't know. Like, they're like this blur. Mine is The Little Mermaid, because she's willing to sacrifice everything for love, for what she believes in, to be true to herself. She's willing to put it all on the line. So that's always been my favorite. And, you know, the original is so beautiful and poetic and tragic. And then, of course, you know, the good old Disney one was like, you know, my I have every line memorized from when I was 9.
Yeah, I love the fairy tales with like strong women representatives.
Yes.
I think Pocahontas a lot. I don't know if that would be considered a fairy tale.
Which one?
Pocahontas.
Yes.
Just so
Hey,
with nature and with people.
that makes sense from how you
community.
cope with everything. Yeah.
Yeah, and then she finds love, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you?
I think all fairy tales are wonderful because they all have a story they're trying to tell us. You know, I know that now we've got into all the politically stuff about Disney fairy tales and things, but I think every fairy tale is really just trying to about life and about dealing with change and about dealing with, I don't know. I think my newest I love Brave. I think Brave is so sweet with that fiery red hair and going after, you know, all of the danger that's around you. So I guess I must be like you. Mostly when the kids were little, I would just tell them stories that I made up that were about their days, you know. So the three chipmunks, and they all got into trouble that day because they got into the paint, or
well, this is where the storyteller came from then.
Yeah, so the kids would say, oh, Mom, tell me more about Witherspoon, you know, the mouse that lives in the parsonage. And I'd be like, I couldn't remember where I would end the night before. So I'd be like, well, where were we in the story?
I have to do the same thing with my son. Now I do chapters. I somehow got out of the 4 stories a night. I don't know how that happened, but he was like 4 stories. And I was like, well, what if I told him a really good one? And I started to tell him these like really little 4, you know? And then finally I was like, how about we have chapters? And so that night I'm like, so what happened in the last chapter? Let's review because I can't remember.
Yeah.
Like, where exactly did we leave our T-Rex, our Carnotaurus, and the evil witch?
He shows everything, of course, right? He gives you like the
Oh
whole...
oh yeah. You know, there was the lightning that
Yeah,
came down
maybe
the mountain. Oh yeah.
We're creating storytellers in our kids. I that would be wonderful to think that's what we've done.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I think you did. And you know, I love that Esther is forever in this beautiful bright green book, and that we get to have a way to connect with a family, you know, one at a time, that feels so tangible and is such a sincere and just boots on the ground grassroots effort. So thank you for always letting me help you, and thank you for inviting me to help you again this year. And you know, I will always do what I can, even from far away Tampa.
And it's so exciting to watch all of the things that you're doing down in Florida, and you know, just to watch this, you know, your son growing and you burgeoning, and this amazing book you've written. And I think, do you have another one coming out soon?
I hope so. I mean, it's in the process. It's always a longer process. You can churn out a book in 6 months, and then 3 years later, out comes the the book from the publisher.
Well, you're such an inspiration.
Yeah, you're such a beautiful person, Sorboni.
Well, I've always
involvement with This Star Won't Go Out.
I have loved you guys since the second I showed up in your living room, and it's funny too, because at first, and you know, sometimes it takes a little while to convince the fast-paced news world that a book is a news story. And it actually took the movie. Do you remember that? It took the movie coming out to convince them that the book and the human and like everything came together, but I didn't care. I just kept going back and going back. And I was like, okay, remember that book that I told you about and that girl that I told you about? Now it's a movie that's a book that's a girl that, and finally I got to tell the story, which I had always wanted to tell, which was amazing. And that's why I do what I do in news. It's about the people. And at different points, if I've ever been frustrated, you know, my mom would say to me, who are you doing it for? Are you doing it for the newsroom, your bosses, the industry, or are you doing it for the viewers? Are you doing it to tell the people's story? And I'd be like, oh yeah, thank you. Yes, exactly. I'm doing it for that moment of sitting in the living room and meeting all of you for the first time, and then finding a cause that I could stay involved in. So I will be sharing all of the cool auction things and bothering everybody incessantly to come join us on Saturday. And you know, I'll be wearing this for good vibes. This star won't go out. I think it's probably backwards to the world here, but
Yeah.
right. We have our bracelets on.
Wear mine all the time.
Yes.
Well,
Yes. Esther Power.
Stories, whether they're fairy tales or real life, are the things that give us courage. They remind us that life is about change, but that we can grow and move into that change and be better people for it, and hopefully make the world around us better too. So
yeah,
that's my favorite.
And that's the happily ever after, is that it's not where you're trying to get, it's how you live your life every day.
How you get there. Oh, that is so true.
Yeah, ladies, thank you. You're the best. I can't wait till I see you again in person, but this has been amazing. Everybody, find your fairy tale, slay your dragons, and don't ever let the people's stars that you love go out. Good night.
Thank you so much. This was a pleasure.